Hello, my name is Dr. Greta Blake. I'm coming to you from Misericordia University in Dallas, Pennsylvania, where I am an assistant professor of marketing in the College of Business. I started this position last year and needed to update my professional biography. I asked ChatGPT to help me rewrite it, aiming for a professional, confident, and no-nonsense tone, in line with the other members of my department. AI gave me precisely that, except it changed me to a he. That was the moment I realized the machine did not make a mistake. The machine created a reflection of every data set, every headline, and every About Us page it has ever learned from, where leadership looks more like he than she. AI did not invent that bias, it inherited it, and it has the power to amplify it, one rewrite, one resume, and one algorithmic decision at a time. A minor pronoun change was my first glaring experience with AI bias. AI acts as a mirror, forcing us to look at the historical flaws we have built into our systems, and it can also be a mask that helps us to conceal them. And we need to consider both as we build our brand strategy in the age of artificial intelligence. Let's consider the foundation of bias. Many scholars and practitioners have already examined the biases embedded in AI training systems and how those biases often amplify existing inequalities. Still, bias is at the heart of the conversation regarding whether AI functions as a mirror reflecting society or a mask distorting what our brand really stands for. In all likelihood, the answer is probably both. And it's important because the bias built into AI shapes real-world outcomes, often reinforcing discrimination and social inequities. Let's look at the common forms of AI bias and why they matter to marketers. First, we have selection bias. When your data does not accurately reflect your audience, your results will not either. If a facial recognition model is trained mostly on lighter skinned faces, it will misread or miss people with darker skin tones. The result is not a technical glitch. Instead, it becomes a brand liability that reinforces exclusion. Confirmation bias occurs because AI loves patterns, even the wrong ones. If a hiring algorithm is trained that past top performers were men, it may keep serving up male candidates, quietly perpetuating bias. The same logic applies to marketing. If your data reflects yesterday's audiences, your campaigns will too. Measurement bias is pretty straightforward. If you have bad metrics, you'll get bad insights. When your data reflects only those who finish an online course, for instance, you miss the story of everyone who did not finish the course. The same concept holds true in marketing. The customers who did not complete a purchase, did not respond to our call to action, or abandon their shopping carts may be where future marketing opportunities lie. Stereotyping bias. When AI repeats cultural shortcuts, it can damage credibility. If a translation tool links nurse to she and doctor to he, the tool is not just wrong, it is tone deaf. Brands that rely on these systems risk echoing the stereotypes they claim to oppose. Finally, we have outgroup homogeneity bias. AI can lump entire groups together, blurring individuality. Facial recognition systems may incorrectly identify people from racial or ethnic minorities because their datasets lack diversity. In marketing, that translates to generic, one-size-fits-nobody messaging that alienates rather than includes our audiences. Code looks objective, but AI isn't neutral. AI is historical. It learns our past decision and exclusions. It doesn't see bias, only patterns that worked. Yesterday's blind spots may become today's strategy, and that can quietly break your brand promise. In this way, AI is a mirror of our biases. For generations, we understood the role of advertising to be a mirror of our society. Stephen Fox and other historians have written about this and have written that the reflection was imperfect, biased, and even messy. One of my favorite advertising history reads is Stephen Fox's The Mirror Makers. I just find it fascinating. I have no tie to it. Fox presents a historical overview of traditional advertising. His work points out that advertising is both a mirror and can sometimes be a manipulator. It is an art form that sells products while revealing who Americans are, as well as who they want to be. AI has the power to amplify this, demonstrating the ability to make choices that can have a tremendous impact on our branding. Consider the fact that we are living through one of the most transformative moments in marketing history. Yet beneath the promise of this efficiency sits this dangerous assumption that the machine is neutral. We see code, data, and numbers, and we assume objectivity. But AI is trained by us on human history using our own targeting logic, our own assumptions and exclusions, some accidental, some intentional, all of which are embedded. Consider the scope of individual bias. When a person is biased, the impact is local, the scope is limited. An AI-generated algorithm, on the other hand, takes that single localized flaw and scales our historical bias. The machine looks at the patterns already present in our data, who we have historically chosen to show this product to, or who we have assumed was our ideal customer. Because the AI optimizes for efficiency and profit, it doesn't see a flaw. It considers a proven successful pattern. That existing bias is treated as the optimal path to success. The system replicates that single historical flawed decisions millions of times every second across every customer journey. It can happen so fast and across so many users that the biased outcomes become the default. It becomes the optimized setting for all future marketing spend. Because this system is quietly and efficiently generating profit, there is little business incentive to find and fix the invisible bias. The bias is now not just a flaw, it becomes a profitable feature. AI can turn one biased decision into millions of micro decisions a second, quietly, efficiently, profitably. If that is counter to your brand promise, you are likely to have a brand reputation problem. Let's consider the Reddit experiment. Researchers at the University of Zurich in Switzerland experimented on the Change My Views subreddit. The AI bots posed as human users with tailored personas, making more than 1,700 posts. Violating the standard of informed consent, researchers posted on controversial opinions, posing as a trauma victim or as a Black man opposed to Black Lives Matter. The university faced significant criticism for the ethical violation, and Reddit's legal team threatened to take action for a breach of its rules and user trust. The university later stated that the study would not be published and implemented stricter oversight for future studies. However, this research deepens public anxiety about AI manipulation and trust. From a digital marketer standpoint, it highlights a growing problem in interactive communication. As the title of one article from the University of Melbourne reads, "We can't tell if we're being persuaded by a person or a program." If AI can infiltrate some online communities, pose as humans, and shift opinions convincingly, the public's anxiety is justified. From a marketer's perspective, AI can personalize a message so precisely that it could be the invisible line between influence and full-blown manipulation. Suppose people click buy or vote because AI predicted their weaknesses better than they understood them. In that case, we have crossed the line from marketing to behavioral engineering, arranging the environment so that one gets the behavior that one wants. Marketing lies in that slim space between helping someone make a decision and making the decision for them. Ethical marketing, that is. This brings us to another paradox for marketers when it comes to transparency. There is this temptation to not disclose when AI is used. So the power of AI as a mask poses a genuine disclosure dilemma for marketers. There is a growing consensus that content should be labeled. However, research shows that when people know content is AI generated, engagement drops. A study published in October of 2024 titled "People Are Skeptical of Headlines Labeled as AI Generated, Even if True or Human Made, because they assume full AI automation" by Alte and Gallardi points this out. The pair investigated how labeling headlines as AI generated influenced both the perceived accuracy of the headlines and participants' intentions to share them. They used a pre-registered online experiment conducted with US and UK participants, sample size of 4,976 respondents, who were randomly assigned to one of 5 conditions. Number 1 was the control condition in which no headline was labeled. 2 was the correct label condition in which AI-generated headlines were labeled. Number 3, the missing label condition in which only half of the AI-generated headlines were labeled. Number 4, the noisy label condition in which half of the AI-generated headlines were labeled and half of the human-generated headlines were mislabeled. And number 5, the false label condition, in which false headlines were labeled as false. Participants were exposed to 16 headlines and asked to rate either the perceived accuracy of the headlines or their intention to share them, to test the hypothesis that headlines labeled as AI generated would be rated as less accurate and receive lower sharing intentions, and that exposure to headlines labeled as AI generated would reduce trust in the news and journalists. The impact of labeling headlines as AI generated was 3 times smaller than labeling them as false, indicating that although AI labels do reduce trust, not nearly as much as false content labels do. These findings indicate that although participants did not equate AI-generated content with falsehood, labeling headlines as AI-generated lowered their perceived accuracy and people's willingness to share them. According to the authors, AI aversion stems from the expectation that headlines labeled as AI-generated were entirely written by AI with no human supervision. This suggests that labeling AI-generated content should be approached cautiously to avoid unintended adverse effects on content that is harmless or even beneficial, and that using labels requires transparency about what the labels themselves actually mean. Labeling AI content at scale also presents challenges. First, as with any labeling, social media companies may miss some AI content, and they inevitably will. The omission of labels has been studied in relation to fake news headlines. A 2020 study published by the American Psychological Association found that warnings on some headlines led untagged headlines to be seen as more accurate. The same effect was replicated in the context of which headlines to share on social media. Put simply, labeling some AI content may lead to the implied truth effect, in which something seems true simply because it has not been corrected. Second, prior work on automated journalism and robot journalism has shown that people rate human written news as much more readable and higher in quality and equally credible as computer-generated news. Third, exposure labels for AI-generated content may signal that the online environment is saturated with AI-generated content and as such isn't a reliable source of trustworthy information. While this may be beneficial in low-quality environments, it also risks undue skepticism in high-quality information environments. AI labels can be compared to interventions against misinformation that reduce trust in legitimate news and the perceived accuracy of trustworthy news. For example, research on deepfake videos demonstrates this concept. Informing people that deepfake videos exist make them more likely to believe that any video can be a fake. AI labels can be compared to interventions against misinformation that reduce trust in legitimate news and the perceived accuracy of trustworthy news. Research on deepfake videos demonstrates this concept. The impact of labeling computer-generated news as either computer or human-generated was studied. Dutch journalists preferred the human label, while other Dutch participants ranked the news labeled as computer-generated more favorably. This raises the concern that generative AI may erode trust in all digital content, even when it is accurate and reliable. Finally, more recent work in the United States has shown that human-generated headlines labeled as AI are rated as less accurate than duplicate human-generated headlines not labeled as AI. Generated headlines are perceived as less trustworthy, but not less accuracy or unfair. This effect was diminished when the sources used by the AI were disclosed. These findings imply that care is needed when labeling AI-generated content to prevent adverse effects on non-harmful or even useful AI material. The findings suggest that AI-generated content, when harmful, should be labeled explicitly as such, rather than merely tagged as AI-generated. Moreover, the findings highlight the importance of transparency about the meaning of the labels to avoid users making incorrect assumptions and reacting in unintended ways. This fuels the temptation to skip the label. Considering all of these factors, some brands quietly choose to skip the label. However, laws such as the European Union's AI Act and the Colorado AI Act already mandate disclosure when AI interacts with consumers. Labeling may eventually become the baseline, but ethical marketing and building brand trust have never been about clearing the lowest bar. They involve choosing transparency because it protects your brand and earns customer trust. So strategically, disclosure is more than a compliance box. Disclosure is a brand signal. Further, the closer your AI gets to the consumer, the higher the stakes are for your brand. When AI is running quietly in the background, optimizing bids, cleaning your data, automating your repetitive tasks, risks are relatively low. Consumers never see the AI, and they probably never need to. When AI becomes the thing that your customers interact with, your voice, your recommendations, your copy, your chatbot, your creative, every direct interaction or touch point becomes a trust event. Touch points are the inflection points marketers cannot afford to ignore. If consumers feel misled about who or what they are engaging with, trust evaporates. When trust collapses, no brilliant campaign or perfectly tuned algorithm can rebuild it overnight. Transparency and labeling should be part of your brand strategy. Your brand strategy creates a distinctive promise in the consumer's minds. Transparency is not just compliance. Transparency represents a promise. In a marketplace drowning in content, it can protect your brand equity, strengthen your brand reputation, and earns the kind of trust that algorithms cannot manufacture. Transparent use of AI becomes part of your brand narrative. Transparency signals responsibility. Transparency differentiates the brand from competitors. Transparency builds loyalty with audiences who are increasingly skeptical of digital experiences. When transparency becomes a brand strategy, not a legal obligation, you stop reacting to regulation and start shaping expectations. Compliance is the absolute bare minimum. It's what we can get away with. Ethical marketing is the bold choice to do what's right when no one else is watching. AI has the power to streamline your operations. However, it also has the power to alter your brand identity. Every prediction, every exclusion, every automated decision becomes part of how your brand shows up in the world. Marketers must remember that branding is a management tool and an organization's most valuable asset. An organization and all of its components should embody the brand to build a storehouse of trust. Missteps, both in mirroring or masking, that break your promises to consumers can quickly damage a carefully established brand identity. I do like to make the comparison to another revolutionary technology. To wrap up, consider the commercialization of the internet in the 1990s. Much like AI, networking technology had existed for years without customers thinking much about it. Much like the introduction of the large language model AI, we saw a huge boom when the internet was commercialized. The early websites of the 1990s had no model to follow, so they were often chaotically designed and off-brand. If you're curious, the Wayback Machine will give you plenty of examples of poorly designed off-brand websites. Companies may experience the same learning curve with AI in marketing, but because it is reiterated at scale, the stakes are much higher. The lesson we can learn from the internet's commercialization is to protect our brand, our image, and our story, exercising care and factoring in human accountability when using AI, especially when we face our customers with it. Thank you so much for being here today and allowing me to share my views on branding and AI. Keep in mind as we move forward that AI is a content machine. It creates efficiencies that we can't, but it's also a bit of a loose cannon right now. These small glitches aren't just technical quirks, they're brand risks. Off-brand AI content doesn't just sound wrong, it erodes trust. Marketers still need to navigate the voice, the values, and the brand promises that we offer. If you're not paying attention, that algorithm will speak for you, and it won't sound like you.